Hey everyone, it's Lexi. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you my April wrap up and also the books that are on my May TBR. I can't believe we're kind of approaching the kind of midpoint of the year almost. So we're getting into summer season. So it's crazy how much or how fast this year has gone by. So, but yeah, overall my April reading month was just kind of okay. Like I had some rereads that I enjoyed, but overall it was just kind of like a meh. It was like an okay month. Like there was some 3 stars, 2.5 stars, and then some 4 stars with rereads, but like I said, it was nothing like really like exceptionally fancy or anything like that this month. But I definitely have for my May TBR, I have ones that I am really excited about, so hopefully that will kind of, you know, change some of my reviews for next month. But without further ado, let's get started. So first up, I ended up listening to the audiobooks as a reread for A Court of Wings and Ruin and A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously I had read this series before. I think for the original trilogy, I think this was my 3rd time reading through it, so I'm well familiar with this world and the characters, and I know these books are flawed. I know there are cringe things that happen in it, and especially listening to some of the, like, you know, spicy scenes via like audio, I find it very cringy and not romantic at all. I think having it in my head makes it a little bit more of an enjoyable experience as opposed to being like read it, so it's a little bit cringe that way. So I know there's flaws with this series, but there's something like, I love the sense of found family, I love the characters and all those things, so it's really just a joy to go back and reread these books in preparation for the new one coming out later this year. And I just, like I said, I enjoy it. I gave both of them a 4 out of 5 stars. Like A Court of Mist and Fury will always be like a 5-star, like that will be like the peak, but I still really enjoyed this series. I remembered like a good portion of the original trilogy. It was just Silver Flames that I didn't remember too much, so it was a good refresher for the kind of new books coming out. So I will just be able to like kind of read a kind of brief summary just to make sure I have all the points picked out, but they're just fun. Like I said, I just enjoy them. I know they're flawed, but I just really enjoy them, and I think if something makes you happy, like, I don't think we should, you know, bash on that. So like I said, I gave them 4 out of 5 stars. Are they perfect? No. Do I find being read spicy scenes very cringy? Yes. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I just forgot how explicit, I guess, Court of Silver Flames was. Like, I remember reading it. I remember it being the pandemic and like driving through a snowstorm to get to Barnes and Noble to get my hands on this. And yeah, I forgot how spicy, like some of the stuff I was like, oh my god, like it kind of took me by surprise because I guess I like forgot about those. But like I said, overall it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the new ones coming out later this year. Next, I ended up picking up The Spy Coast by Tess Gerritsen. This is her like new series that follows a group of retired CIA agents that live in this small remote town in Maine. This one follows a girl named Maggie who retired. I want to say it's Maggie. It starts with a yes, Maggie. But she retired from the CIA after a really kind of bad case, and so she's kind of put that in the past. Like she lives in her like quiet life now, but when kind of things kind of get bubbled up and are brought back to light regarding that final like case she was on, it kind of makes her relive those things and figure out maybe something isn't right here, and it kind of goes from there. I think it's best to kind of go in not really knowing too much about this, but I really enjoyed it. I really love Tess Gerritsen. She's near and dear to my heart as an author because the Resilient Isles series made me really fall in love with the crime, murder, mystery genre. So that was like the first crime series I got into when I was in high school. So she's an author that is like means a lot to me, and I really enjoyed this. I thought this was a solid start. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. You can tell like it's just kind of setting up the series, and I believe that each book in the series maybe follows a different agent. So I do have the next one on my shelf behind me there, which I'm excited to kind of continue. I think the 3rd book comes out sometime this summer, so I want to be able to be caught up before then. But I really liked it. It was super suspenseful. I loved kind of the 2 different narration styles where we kind of follow present day, where everything's kind of, you know, being brought to the surface, and then we also are following the events that led to like kind of that explosive final case. And the last bit was really suspenseful. I just wish we had more time to get to know some of the other characters, but I feel like because this one was really the first one, it's kind of just setting everything up, and I'm sure we'll get to know more of the characters as the series progresses. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a solid start to the series, and I definitely will be picking up book 2 soon. Next, I ended up listening to the audiobook for The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez. I was really excited about this one. I loved her. This is the third book of hers that I've read. I read Just for the Summer, the one that came out last year, I'm totally blanking on it. Yes, Say You Remember Me, that's the one it is. And then this one's kind of the next one that's in like the companion series for the Say You'll Remember Me one. So this is book 2 of 3. And it follows like someone who's like briefly touched on that we get introduced in the other one as the other companions are. But basically it follows 2 people. They ended up meeting one night at a concert, and our main character, our main love interest, I totally am bad for names, Chris. Basically, his mom just passed away. He was not really feeling up to it, but he really liked Larissa, who he met through mutual friends. And instead of being the one who brought her home that night of the concert, which he was wanting to, but just wasn't feeling up for it, just because he kind of went through a big personal loss, his friend Mike ends up bringing Larissa home, and Mike and Larissa start dating. But he's always had a crush on her. This one was a little bit iffy because it deals with kind of emotional cheating, which I'm not a fan of. I don't like it in media, and I don't like it in books. So it was really hard to kind of see these characters where Mike is kind of struggling with alcoholism. He has all these issues, and he's kind of out of the picture, leaving Chris to be with Larissa a lot of the time, and it's very clear the kind of emotional cheating that is going on. So I don't really like that. I felt like it's really hard to read, and kind of that cheating aspect, especially at the end, like they do make it awkward with their friend group that they like kind of did this. So it's a little bit weird, and I like can see how, you know, this came about. Like I can see how this, you know, could be like an interesting like rom-com book, but anything with emotional cheating or cheating in any way, I just am not okay with. I felt like, especially Larissa as a character, she obviously has a traumatic background of like her dad stole her identity, so she's in a lot of like debt, financial debt. Her mom's kind of aloof, so has no money. She's working all these jobs, and she's just like all these things, but she's kind of very much kind of babied by Mike's friend group, where they try to, you know, hide his extreme alcoholism, his like drunken, you know, states, all these things. Like I felt like she was baby to the point where it was just like a little bit annoying, and she was very oblivious to what was going on she was just kind of, I felt like a little bit annoying that way. So I was really disappointed by this one, because I've loved the other 2 ones that I've read, but this one was just a little, like, I didn't like Larissa. It was just a little bit weird. There are some things like, and like the emotional cheating that I'm not okay with. There are some things I did like. They mentioned like Chris is like a speed reader. He doesn't watch a lot of TV and all that stuff, and like how they bond through reading and books. And that's very similar to me and my husband. And when we first started dating, like he's a speed reader. He doesn't watch a lot of TV. And like we really kind of initially bonded when we first started dating over our love of literature. So I liked kind of that parallel. But again, like I said, the emotional cheating part, I just had a really hard time with. So I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. There were parts that I really enjoyed. I did really like their chemistry of Chris and Larissa. But again, I'm just not a fan of emotional cheating. And then finally, I picked up Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. I finally had this one. This one has been on my TBR for a very long time, and I was like, you know what, this is a little bit of an easier read, so I will pick that up after kind of having a busy month. And I finished it within like 2 days basically of reading, so it is a quick read. But basically the premise of this is that it follows a bunch of different people who all have like kind of one common event take place. And basically it is a bank robbing gone wrong, where the bank robber goes to the bank not realizing that it is a cashless bank, flees, then runs to this like apartment building to kind of flee the police, where it turns into kind of a hostage situation where people are looking at this open house for the apartment, and it kind of goes from there. But it shows the interconnectedness of these characters, their different paths and stories, and how, I guess, like how that kind of made them who they are, and like how those events of the past resulted in like kind of the things that happen when they are in the hostage situation. It's very hard to explain, but I've had really high expectations because I really love his like Beartown trilogy. I like My Friends, so I had high expectations, but this one was just okay. I really loved the narration style. I think it's very unique. I loved how interconnected all the characters were, but I just felt like that emotional punch in the gut, but like that I got, or like that emotional connection that I had with some of his other works, I just didn't have in this case. I'm just looking at my notes here. Like, I was just slightly underwhelmed. Like, I felt like I wanted to be more attached to the characters, and I just didn't have that deep emotional connection. I thought it was a really interesting concept. I really liked how it was very much a character focus and following how seemingly these strangers, are at this, open house or open apartment, basically, and how their choices kind of led them to that point, and then how they kind of bond together in this experience. So I really liked that. I really liked how it was very hopeful in terms of how it looks at humanity, and all those things. But it was just like I said, it was just kind of underwhelming. I wanted something more. And I know I'm in the minority with this because when I was looking at the Goodreads reviews, like, people were like, knocked off their feet by this book. Like, people were really impacted. But I think there was just something, I just felt like I was just at arm's length with these characters, and there was some sense of like, I know like they're not supposed to be likable, like some of the Beartown people, characters are unlikable in that trilogy, but I was just very connected to their story, and that wasn't the case here. Like I said, like it was just, there's something off. Willow's just having a little drink of water. I don't know if you can hear that, but I don't know if it was just because I like read this right after my grandpa's funeral, so I was just like emotionally drained. I don't know if it was just the timing of when I read that, but yeah, there's just something missing about this, and I can't really really figure out what it is. But like I said, it was okay. Not as good as some of his other ones, but it was fine. Next, let's move on to my May TBR. Currently, this is the audiobook that I'm listening to, and it is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. This one follows a girl named Esme who grows up with her father, who is kind of like this academic at Oxford in kind of the late 1800s into the early 1900s, and he works for the scriptorium, which was this like actual thing where people would compile lists of words to create kind of a dictionary, and it talks about all of the words, all the effort that goes into discovering these words, finding definitions for them, all those sentences that go into it. So she's kind of grown up around words, and she finds, she ends up like discovering that not all words are put into the dictionary, which are defined by like these men, these kind of old crusty men that kind of determine words that are put and published in these editions of the dictionary. And so she starts collecting words that are, I would say, maybe not like gentlemen will use. So she kind of goes to more of the seedy parts of town and discovers more words that I guess are a little bit more explicit or vulgar that we would call today, or ones that are associated with women that aren't necessarily men kind of prioritize to put in the library. So that I would say is kind of like somewhat of the main. I feel like that honestly is like it's kind of a little misleading because the plot, or the synopsis of the book makes it seem like that is kind of the primary focus, but I would say like the main part of this book is Esme's kind of like coming of age story in kind of the late 1800s into the early 1900s. So it's a little bit deceiving. Like I was a little bit like kind of confused by that because I feel like it's more of focus on Esme and her character and her growing up during this time period, as opposed, and like the dictionary stuff is kind of in the background or kind of a side thing. So that's just one thing to be aware of, but this is one that I'm currently listening to on audiobook right now. So we'll see how I feel when I finish this, but I've, heard good things about it and like something like really great, or has a really great ending. So I'm very curious to see, but this is my current audiobook read right now. Next, this is a book that I have coming in the mail in the next few days, and it's one I've seen online, and just having reread the ACATAR series, it makes me kind of want something like romantasy, and so one I've seen online a lot right now is, I have it kind of up here on my computer screen, it's called Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. And it says, the gods sent monsters to the 5 kingdoms to remind mortals they must kneel. I spent my life kneeling, to their will and to my father's. As a princess, my only duty is to wear the crown and obey the king. I was never meant to rule, never meant to fight, and I was never supposed to be the daughter who sealed an ancient treaty with her own blood. For that change, that fateful day, I stepped into my father's throne room. The day a legendary monster hunter sailed to our shores. The day a prince ruined my life. Now I'm crossing treacherous lands because a warrior who despises me as much as I despise him, bound to a future I didn't choose, and a husband I barely know. Everyone wants me to be something I'm not, a queen, a spy, a sacrifice. But what if I refuse the role chosen for me? What if I made my own rules? What if there's power in being underestimated? So this one is just like one that I've seen kind of people talking about. I think the second book just came out recently. And I was like, you know what? I'm looking for a good trilogy. It will be fun to like maybe start like a new series, and one like has books that I'm, you know, excited for coming out. So this is one that I have ordered and I am excited to pick up soon. This is one that just seems so interesting for me. My library does not have this on audiobook, and I tend for nonfiction to prefer to listen to it as an audiobook as opposed to read it. But this is one that I just know I'm gonna love regardless what format I read it in. And it is Kindred by Rebecca Ragg Sykes, and this one follows kind of Neanderthals. And if you don't know, I have kind of a weird education. I have a bachelor's of science in biomedical engineering, a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, a Master's of Science in Orthotics and Prosthetics, and a PhD in Biomedical Engineering. So you can see like the anthropology is a little bit of a oddball, but it's just something that a topic that I really enjoyed. It's just something that is really always interests me, especially human evolution. It was just something that I was completely fascinated by, and I loved learning about it in school. And this kind of talks more about Neanderthals and kind of their, you know, their life, what we kind of know about them now. We were always kind of assume them to be, you know, these dumb like cavemen, but they were actually highly intelligent, very, you know, had complex you know, lives and culture and all these things. So it's definitely something the little anthro nerd in me would really love, and I can just see myself, you know, really enjoying this. So it's been on my TBR for several years now, and I was like, you know what, I just miss all learning about all the anthro stuff, so this will be something that kind of is scratching that itch. So this is the book that I'm currently reading right now, and I'm only about like 15 or so pages into it, and it is The Life She Was Given by Ellen Marie Wiseman. This one is just something that I know is going to be heartbreaking because I've read a few books by this author, but it says, on a summer evening in 1931, Lily Blackwood glimpses circus lights from the grimy window of her attic bedroom. Lily isn't allowed to explore the meadows around Blackwood Manor. She's never even ventured beyond her narrow room. Mama insists it's for Lily's own protection, that people would be afraid if they saw her. But on this unforgettable night, Lily is taken outside for the first time and sold to the circus sideshow. More than 2 decades later, 19-year-old Julia Blackwood has inherited her parents' estate and horse farm. For Julia, home was an unhappy place full of strict rules and forbidden rooms, and she hopes that returning might erase those painful memories. Instead, she becomes immersed in a mystery involving a hidden attic room and photos of circus scenes featuring a striking young girl. At first, the Barlow Brothers Circus is just another prison for Lily. But in this red tag, sometimes brutal world, Lily discovers strength, friendship, and a rare affinity for animals. Soon, thanks to elephants Pepper and Jojo and their handler Cole, Lily is no longer a sideshow spectacle, but the circus' biggest attraction, until tragedy and cruelty collide. It will fall to Julia to learn the truth about Lily's fate and her family's shocking betrayal, and find a way to make Blackwood Manor into a place of healing at last. This one just seems really interesting. Like I said, I'm only like 15 or so pages into it, but this author does a really fantastic job at weaving in kind of the past and present storyline, so I'm sure this one is going to be very heartbreaking and emotional. Because I'm kind of now into audiobooks, I've been trying to find ones that would be fun to read, and so the next 2 that I want to get to are part of like the Abby Jimenez Part of Your World one. So like I said, I've read like the last one in this one, so obviously I know like who ends up with who, but I thought these ones would be good ones to listen to via audiobook. So I have Yours Truly and then also Part of Your World, which is the first one in here. So these ones I think would be very good via audiobook. So I don't want to know too much about the plot, I just kind of want to dive in. So these ones are going to be my like audiobook reads for kind of this month. And lastly, I feel like I have a lot of books on my TBR this month, but I do have a few days off, so I'll be kind of having more time to dedicate to reading, and it is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This one just seems really interesting, and it goes, Alex Green is a young girl in a world much like ours, except for its most seminal event, the mass dragoning of 1955, where hundreds of thousands of ordinary wives and mothers sprouted wings, scales, and talons, left a trail of fiery destruction in their paths, and took to the skies. Was it their choice? What will become of those left behind? Why did Alex's beloved Aunt Marla transform, but Alex's mother did not? No one knows. It's taboo to speak of it. Forced into silence, Alex nevertheless must face the consequences of this astonishing event. A mother more protective than ever, an absentee father, their upsetting insistence that her aunt never existed, and watching her beloved cousin Beatrice become dangerously obsessed with the forbidden. This one just seems really interesting. I kind of think it deals with like feminine rage and kind of feminist themes. So I'm really excited to see how I feel about this one. Again, this is a book that's been on my TBR for a while, and I'm like, this might be a good time, and I feel like this is kind of very like summery with the cover, so I think that's maybe why I gravitated toward this book this month. But I am very excited to dive in and kind of see what's the like political commentary on this one as well. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of the books that you read this month were and all that fun stuff, and which ones you're looking forward to start in May. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.